I'll use the book though. Okay. And here's to devotees who haven't been here before. Have you been here before? Denarian? This is the first time?
No, we have been.
We've been here. Oh, well, you kids didn't know. Maybe they would have given you a book for free or something.
It's so good a book for free.
Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vasakans Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Siddha Devi Pranamami Hri Priye Panchakapa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patiranam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shadvaiti Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Srimad Bhagavatam Cantos Bhagavad-gita Chapter 17 The Divisions of Faith, text number 17, is that right?
Yeah.
It has their iPhone or whatever. Yeah, there it is. Shradaya Pariyataptam. Rather a weak response. 17. Even if we don't believe in Krishna, at least we should recite the verse. Shradaya Pariyaptaptam Tapastat Trividam Narai Apalakankshibira Yuktai Satvikam Parichakshite Shradaya Pariyaptaptam Tapastat Trividam Narai Apalakankshibira Yuktai Satvikam Parichakshite. Translation and no purport. This threefold austerity performed with transcendental faith by men not expecting material benefits, but only engage only for the sake of the Supreme, is called austerity in goodness. Text 18. Satkara mana pujartam tapodambena chaivayat kriyate tadiha proktam rajasam chalam adruvam. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Penance performed out of pride and for the sake of gaining respect, honor, and worship is said to be in the mode of passion. It is neither stable nor permanent. Purport. Sometimes penance and austerity are executed to attract people and receive honor, respect, and worship from others. Persons in the mode of passion arrange to be worshipped by subordinates and let them wash their feet and offer riches. Such arrangements artificially made by the performance of penances are considered to be in the mode of passion. The results are temporary. They can be continued for some time, but they are not permanent. I might as well read the next one. Buddha grahin atmano yat pidaya kriyate tapa prasyo savinartam va tatamasamudaritam. Penance performed out of foolishness, with self-torture, or to destroy or injure others is said to be the mode of ignorance. Purport: there are instances of foolish penance undertaken by demons like Hiranyakashipu, who performed austere penances to become immortal and kill the demigods. He prayed to Brahma for such things, but ultimately he was killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To undergo penances for something which is impossible is certainly the mode of ignorance. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyadyade Sadharane. We're coming to the end of the Bhagavad-gita. And at the end of the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna is starting to summarize what the different teachings he's already given. But there are two basic teachings that we know. One is that we're not this body, and the second is Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in between the two, there is something called pure devotional service that connects us with Krishna. That's the entire philosophy. Any questions? Well, we can explain a little bit more. Now here it mentions three modes of material nature. Now the three modes of material nature are described in different ways by psychologists and by philosophers, etc., etc. But here they're being explained in terms of entanglement within the material energy. Generally, people want to find out what their personalities are like so they know how to enjoy better in the material world. People want to find out what their talents are, what their proclivities are, so that they know exactly what kind of occupation they'll have. But the whole idea is they want to get an occupation so they can make money, so they can eat, sleep, mate, and defend. So basically it comes down to the same activities. No matter what our personality is, it winds up simply how we're going to eat, how we're going to sleep, how we're going to mate, and how we're going to defend. But this idea of the three modes is so we can understand how they work, so we can avoid them, not get entangled in them. And here it mentions, well, Krishna will mention charity, he'll mention sacrifice, and he'll mention penance. So these are very important qualities that we should understand the modes of nature in. Because in Bhagavad-gita, Krishna says, Abhayam sattva samshuddhir jnana yoga vyavyastiti dhanam dhammas tajagnascha swadhyaya tapararjavam. In other words, there's a progression of self-realization. For those who have understood that we're different from this material world and have an interest in progressing out of material consciousness into our original spiritual consciousness, then it's helpful to understand what the different levels of progression are so we can find out where we are and what's the next step forward. If you're walking, you're trying to get somewhere, you want to find out if you're going in the right direction. Because nowadays we use a GPS to find out. But we have to use something. So that has become our guide. Because we're more or less, especially in New York, we're blind. And if you just follow the traffic, you're following all the other blind people. And the result is you'll wind up in there's so many ditches here in New York. So we have to find out where we're going, and if we're actually going there, where we're supposed to be going, and if we're actually going there. Now, to find out where we're going is quite an advancement. To find out where we shouldn't go is also quite an advancement. To actually want to get there, that's a really big advancement. And to actually be on the path of going there, that's even more advancement. And to actually get there, well, then you got the cherry on top of the cake. But at least we should know where we are and where we might be, either forward or backwards. And then a sane person, an intelligent person, will want to go forward. Now, in the beginning, it's called swadaya. Swadaya means self-study. Practically everyone is trying to study themselves. As a matter of fact, that's what we do all day long. Trying to find out what my mind thinks, what my body feels like. We're always studying it, but to study the real self, that Krishna begins to explain when he explains that we're souls within an ever-changing body, and that the soul, theoretically, is full of knowledge, is full of bliss eternally. Now we sense our eternality because we're existing. No one, generally speaking, as long as we're conscious, we don't think I've stopped existing. Although we may have been here for only a short period of time, considering eternality, but we've existed during that whole time. So we have a sense of eternity, of eternal existence. As a matter of fact, we don't believe we're even going to leave this body. We think it's going to go on forever. Because we're eternal, so we figure anything we come in contact with must also be eternal. So unfortunately it's not, well maybe it's fortunately, it's not true. We're not going to be here forever. And by nature we're blissful, so we conclude for the most part, if we're not suffering, then we must be blissful, because that's our nature. And therefore people are satisfied with every level of absence of suffering they're experiencing, for the most part. And if they're suffering or they're anxiety, then they just take some intoxication so they can get an acceptable level of existence, of happiness in their existence. Because we live to be happy. No one's living to be miserable. And if we're going to be eternal, if we're actually eternal, then it's better to be eternally blissful than eternally in hell. And we want knowledge. We have some consciousness. We actually think, for the most part, we actually believe we actually know what's going on. Although we don't know anything. As a matter of fact, we're worse than not knowing anything. Everything we know is wrong. In the sense that if we think we're this body, and all the knowledge that we have in order to support the body could be utilized properly, but for the most part, it's utilized incorrectly. Therefore, we can see modern society is making so much progress in the wrong direction. And they're proud of it. And therefore, when they see the Hare Krishnas, they're not making as much money as most people generally. They don't go to the movies, hopefully. They don't take intoxication, although they always look intoxicated. Some people think, oh, these poor people, they're misdirected, they're unintelligent, they're more or less they're losers in the material world. But they always have this weird smile on their face, so they might be happy. So this is because people are andayatandira pigiyamanas te pikshatantra urudami bada. They don't even know the most basic fact, a reality, the fact that we're eternal souls. And we have an eternal identity, that not only we've forgotten about our eternal identity, but we're actually thinking ourselves to be something that we're not, which is even worse. It's one thing to be forgetful of who we are, but it's even more bewildering when you think yourself to be something you're not. Now, of course, we have the human form of life, and we're pretty much confident that, it's not so bad. But we become a grasshopper in our next lifetime, and we actually think we're a grasshopper. I mean, that's pretty sad, isn't it? And that's not the lowest we can become. In any case, Krishna says we have to really study our real selves. Now people think, well, this is really insignificant. I don't really have to know about myself. I know so many things. And whoever I am, it doesn't really matter, even if I'm eternal. As I said before, one time I was distributing a book at the University of Texas in Austin, and I presented as we have out front here, the changing body. In the book there's a picture to one of the students there. And I was pointing out we had a baby body, we had a 15-year-old body, and now we have this body. And the body keeps on changing. And I said, which body do you have? So he pointed to one of the bodies, and he said, that's me. And he said, wow, that's amazing. I'm not this body. So he said, that's real, that's right, you're not this body. So he said, well, why don't you take the book and maybe you can give a donation? He said, no, I don't need your book, but that's fantastic knowledge. Wow, and he shook my hand, and he went away, I'm not this body. We never saw him again. But luckily he's still not his body, whatever body he has now. So people actually think they have some knowledge, and even if real knowledge is presented to them, they don't really take it seriously. It's almost like in the spiritual world, everyone may know that Krishna is God, but at least in Vrindavan, they don't take it seriously. So even we know we're not this body, but we don't take it seriously. We have too many other things to do. Therefore, unless one studies Swadhyaya and actually becomes convinced, then there's other things we have to do. For instance, the brahmacharis from the beginning of life, they're supposed to study who they are. And they go through the required penance and austerity in order to accomplish it. Now, if they're not take it seriously in brahmachari life, we should say, if they take it seriously in brahmachari life, they can stay brahmacharis or eventually become sannyasis, in the real sense of the term. Not just change of dress, but actually purify their consciousness to the point to get to the goal, which is, at least in the Varna and Ashram system, abhayam sattva samshuddhira jnana yoga vyavyastiti, which corresponds to bliss, knowledge, and eternality in the material world. Because that's everyone's goal eternally. We may confuse it with so many complications, but it all boils down, everything boils down to bliss, knowledge, and eternity. Knowledge of how to be blissful eternally. Now even you take cosmetics or something like that, which nowadays I guess men and women they utilize, $1 billion business, but it's all meant to make people at least look like they're eternal. And what's the idea of looking like you're eternal? What's the knowledge of the how to put on makeup so you look like you're 10 years older if you're 10 and 20 years younger if you're 50. What's the whole idea behind it? So you can get some happiness, so that you can attract someone and they'll make you happy, hopefully. So everything boils down to why people buy a car. because with the knowledge of the car that got them the car, then they can attract people to make them happy. So ultimately, everything is meant to attract someone, some living entity, to make you happy. Like you may offer a dog a biscuit. You may know how to do that. At least you had enough intelligence how to get the dog biscuit and offer it to the dog because you hope the dog will come up and lick you and be your friend and appreciate you. So ultimately that's what we're looking for, knowledge of how to make people love us and appreciate us, who we think we are, in this body. So everything comes down to that. Bliss, knowledge, and eternity. So Abhayam, what would in terms of bliss, knowledge, and eternity, what would Abhayam, fearlessness, what would that correspond to? Well, you have one of three choices. What would samsudira, purification one's existence, what would that be corresponding to? Or jnana yoga vyavastiti, what would jnana knowledge correspond to?
It's impersonal.
Between bliss, knowledge, and eternity, what would knowledge? I'm hoping someone's awake. Atmanivedana, which would take a guess.
To chit, knowledge.
Yes, knowledge. Knowledge corresponds to knowledge.
And fearlessness to eternity.
Yes, yes. And what's the last one?
Oh, what was?
Samsudya. Purification.
To happiness.
Yeah.
Bliss.
Bliss.
Ananda.
Yes, Ananda. So in the material world, to be fearless, then you're approaching eternality. To be knowledgeable of the difference between matter and spirit and the process of realizing it, that's perfect material knowledge. If you're in prison, then to have knowledge of how to dig a hole, a tunnel to get out, that's the best knowledge you can have there. To how to bake bread in the prison and how to play shuffleboard when they give you a chance. That may be knowledge, but it's not as valuable as how to dig a hole and get out of it. So certainly in the material world, knowledge of what the material world is like and why we should get out of it and how to do it, that's real knowledge. And then in order to do that, we have to purify our existence. We don't have to dig a hole, we have to just purify our existence. And then we'll become actually fearless. All our anxieties will go away. When we actually realize we're eternal, then we have nothing to worry about. But, so the brahmachari, he can actually come to that platform by, not just by growing old, but by practicing Krishna consciousness, the austerity and the gaining of knowledge throughout his whole life, which is ultimately to fix your mind on Krishna and simplify your life. Brahmachari life is supposed to be simple anyhow, and to have no other business practically than just to serve Krishna. But if one is not able to do that, it's too inconvenient, that I need some better prasadam, this is too much. Rice, dal, and chapatis, mostly just rice every day. It's too much for me. I'm doing the same thing every day, get up early in the morning, I can never sleep in. It's just too much. And besides that, I have a mission in life to make myself happy. I'm no one in this ashram. Everything everyone else wants to do, doesn't want to do, they give me to do. I got to get out of here. I have a better destination than this. So then in the Vedic culture, if one is properly trained up as a brahmachari, then he realizes that my next step is grihastha life, but I'm trying to continue on with the same basic principle of discovering bliss, knowledge, and eternity, but just develops into something else, namely dhanam, dhammas, and yagya. So yagya means sacrifice, dana means charity, and dhamma means sense and mind control. So that's also corresponding to what we're trying to develop, bliss, knowledge, and eternity. Like dhanam would be part of purification, one's existence. And yagya, ultimately yagya leads to knowledge, and dhanam, that eternality, that I have nothing to lose. I want to give up my false identification with this material energy because I'm eternal. Therefore, I really have nothing to gain here. I have nothing to lose. Therefore, I should be unattached. So dhanam. So the householder is supposed to practice, practically speaking, the same thing as the renunciates are supposed to practice. But it's just more palatable, that's all. To become fearless, to become pure in existence, to become knowledgeable, requires a great deal of sacrifice, penance, and charity in order to come to that platform. But the householders, that's what they're supposed to be practicing. Now, of course, generally speaking, in the Western world, we think household life is meant for enjoyment, material enjoyment, and therefore it's a break from this difficult spiritual life. But actually, it's supposed to be part of spiritual life and an actual culture. It's supposed to be a step above brahmachari life, not a step out of brahmachari life. And the goal of the householder should become tapasya. That's what they're practicing for, how to learn tolerance and how to perform austerity. Giving charity, performing sacrifice, controlling the senses, is so that ultimately we can come to the platform of tapasya. That is fixing the mind on Krishna, because we're living in another platform of consciousness by practice, and therefore, because I'm actually in the spiritual world, my consciousness is in the spiritual world, whatever the material world is presenting to me, it doesn't really disturb me. Now, if we forget Krishna, if we don't develop our Krishna consciousness, whatever is presented to us in the material world makes us either so-called happy or depressed or whatever else. Or our consciousness becomes a reflection of whatever is being presented to us. If we have no internal development, then we're simply subjected to whatever external circumstances we're subjected to. And as Kali Yuga goes on, it's going to be none too pleasant, the external circumstances presented to us. So anyone who's thinking that, looking forward to a bright future in Kali Yuga, will be quite disappointed. On the other hand, if we develop internal consciousness of Krishna consciousness, while we're practicing, dhanam, dhammas, and yagya, is not just meant for the sake of doing it. Every day I get up and I do my pancha yagya, perform 5 types of offerings. No, you can do anything every day, and if we're not developing consciousness, then we're just wasting our time. We're actually not thinking about Krishna, and just to think about Krishna is quite an advancement, but not even thinking about the way of thinking about Krishna, how we can make progress to think about Krishna. If we're just doing everything mechanically, even in Krishna consciousness, then it just remains there. It just remains mechanical. And after a while, we'll get bored with it. So one has to cultivate internal consciousness, and then it's possible to be tapasvi. without Krishna's thinking about Krishna, without developing the ability to remember what Krishna looks like, experience his qualities, his presence with his associates, remember what they're doing and the mood in which they're doing it in, then even though we are able to perform some tapasya, because people sometimes have cultivated that, but it's just a waste of time. It'll just create other kinds of problems, psychological problems, whatever, and ultimately no one remains at tapasya without Krishna consciousness forever. Generally speaking, the material world means bhoga tyaga. We're saving up our credits so we can enjoy. We perform tapasya, like ladies especially, in Kali Yuga especially, they go on diets. So they can, mostly they're not, I mean sometimes people do it for health, but many times they do it just so they can get thinner and attract someone, because everyone's supposed, the standard of beauty in the Western world is you're supposed to look like a stick. Supposed to look hungry all the time. I think in India it's a little bit different. If you look bigger, then it means that you probably have some money. You're getting something to eat. Therefore you become attractive. But ladies go on a diet, but then, by the nature of the material nature, as soon as they get married, then they expand. The whole purpose is finished. So that's called bhoga tyaga.
My husband is laughing too hard.
Well, don't worry, soon he'll be crying. So bhoga tyaga is more or less the nature of the material energy, but so that will be there. Sometimes people become very, very austere, but unless they actually go through the process of sacrifice, charity, and penance, then their austerity is only for some material cause. And Prabhupada mentions in one of the verses, Hiranyakashipu, who stood on the tips of his toes for 120 years of the demigods. And he was so austere, he didn't eat anything, he didn't even breathe, because the ants and the moths and the other insects, they even ate his lungs. They ate his heart. He had no heart to begin with, really. He had something that looked like a heart. And they, as I said before, they ate his brains, because anyone who had any brains wouldn't stand there for 120 years. But what was his goal? His goal was to roll over the whole universe. He wasn't there just to have people, he wasn't so kind, here's a moth, he looks hungry, eat me. No, he wanted to control the whole universe. He wanted to devour everything, actually. So he went through a little austerity for 120 years so he could become God for the rest of existence. But it didn't work. So people will do that, not no one is capable as Hiranyakashipu. They'll go through some austerity in order to get something, and at the end they give up their austerity to enjoy. But if one actually goes through the process of sacrifice according to the Vedic culture and penance, as well as giving in charity, then the result is that one will. The tapasya is probably directed through brahmachari life, where one understands that one is eternal soul, and the aim of life is to get out of the material concept of life, and you can do it by worshiping Vishnu and surrendering to him. And then in household life, you continue with the practice with a little bit more opportunity, for a variety of material experiences, and then you dovetail it, you go through the process, and by the time you get to become a vanaprastha, then you can actually practice austerity because you're actually fixing Krishna consciousness, and therefore giving up material existence is not a big thing. It actually helps one progress deep in one's absorption in Krishna consciousness. Because one knows that the aim of the tapasya is not just to torture oneself, but it's to actually become fearless and actually realize eternality and experience transcendental happiness all the time. So one is trading one thing for something higher because one knows the process and the goal. So nowadays people are doing penance. To live in New York City is a penance. I mean, who in their right mind, just so we sat here and we saw 2 ambulances go by. And they weren't going to a Hare Krishna festival. There's constant reminders of how miserable this place is. Although everyone's really intent on enjoying here. Because you can see, the whole place is lined up with shops everywhere you go. Trying to, tell people, come here and you'll be happy. This is where you find shelter. In the toy shop, in the cinema, or in the supermarket, or whatever. Somehow come in here and you find shelter from the miseries of material existence. So everyone comes here, everyone does everything to get out of misery, become happy, and everyone's advertising. But it just doesn't work. And it won't work. The conclusion is, although people are sincerely trying to become happy and get out of the miseries of material existence, but unless we go through the process, it's not possible to become fearless. And without becoming fearless, without the knowledge, first of all, that we should become fearless, without the knowledge that we're looking for a real permanent happiness, then everything we're doing is just wrong. It's a waste of time. It's misdirection. And if we understand things properly, and whatever level we're on, we try to progress to the next level, then we'll actually have a solid foundation, and we'll get something really valuable. We'll actually become fearless. We'll actually understand things properly, and we'll be happy all the time, because our existence will be pure. Our relationships will be pure. Everything we're doing is pure. Our thoughts will be pure. And therefore, the miseries of material existence won't bother us. Now, of course, we're taking you to the process of Krishna consciousness, but also there's penance there. There's charity. Those are the reciprocations of the loving exchanges with the devotees. So that's our penance. That's our charity. In charity, we give the holy name. We give Krishna conscious philosophy. That's our charity, as Prabhupada said. Our yagya is Sankirtan yagya. And our sense and mind control is that we engage our senses in spreading Krishna consciousness and doing services for Krishna. And we do that in the society of devotees, and we do it to please Krishna and his devotees, then we automatically come to a higher platform. Eventually, we're able to perform more tapasya. Therefore, we have days where we're supposed to fast, like on Ekadasi. As I said before, you can easily perform Nilajala Ekadasi every Ekadasi. The way of doing it is you can have 3 big feasts every Nilajala Ekadasi, or every Ekadasi, but just don't drink any water. Then you can tell all the other devotees, I follow Nilajala Ekadasi. Every Ekadasi is a Nilajala Ekadasi. For the last 20 years, I I followed Nilajala Ekadasi on every Ekadasi. I haven't taken one drop of water. So that's also austerity. Therefore, we have our path, and also the materialist who doesn't know Krishna consciousness, as I said, they're also going to perform penance. They cannot help but avoid it. In order to even eat properly here, you have to work day and night. And probably if you have to, in order to buy the food that you need for most people to eat properly here, get something organic or fresh, you have to work overtime. And by the time you work overtime, you have no time to eat the food. In order to breathe free air, you have to save up, work 24 hours a day practically, so you can get a vacation so for 2 weeks out of the year you can go somewhere where there's air. And water, of course everyone gets bottled water, but no one really knows what's in the bottled water. You just hope nothing's moving around in there. It's not some swimming pool for something else. So people are working hard, but they're not really going to get back what they actually put into it with all the effort. People are very sincere, trying to become happy, try to know how to become happy. The internet, you can go on the internet and you can find out seemingly everything that's going on, but none of it makes people happy, practically speaking, except for Krishna consciousness. The conclusion is, since we have to perform penance, since we have to give in charity, and since we have to perform some sacrifice, we might as well do it for Krishna. Because then we'll get something actually in return. Why we're doing it in the first place, we'll get back bliss, knowledge, and eternity, which is why people do sacrifice, charity, and penance in the first place. Why they do self-study and studying how to perform their penance, how to perform their sacrifice, how to perform their charity. People go to school to study, to find out how to do these things, and then they do it, but they don't get back what they're looking for, namely bliss, knowledge, and eternity. Instead, they get the opposite. Therefore, we might as well study Prabhupada's books so that when we do our sacrifice, charity, and penance, we'll actually get the result, namely bliss, the ability to become detached from the material miseries, and to actually become fearless, develop real love and happiness, and know how to do it. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Were you kind of speaking about Varnashram Dharma through the Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas description, or that's like a separate thing?
No, Varnashram is eternal. Everything is, you can't avoid, and as long as we're living in the material world, you can't avoid Varnashram. But it's just pervertedly manifested now. That's all. You're always going to have, Krishna says they come out of the three modes of material nature. So as long as you have three modes of material nature, which is eternal, and eternally pervading the material world, you're going to have Varnashram. But in the heavenly planets, there is predominantly Kshatriyas and Brahmins. And on this planet is all Shudras, mode of ignorance. So sometimes you have people taking the position of managers or scholars or whatever else, or teachers, but they're all Shudras, so actually they're not. They have some qualification, but generally they're Asuras or the Mayapriti Gyanas, etc. But still, it's just a perverted reflection of the Varnashram, or a deviation from it. To become a erudite scholar in the material world requires that you've, at least to some degree, you've gone through the other stages. It's not ordinary for a person to have material knowledge. It means that they must have done some penance or austerity to get it. But if it's not used for Krishna service, then they become a demon. and asura bhavam ashritya. They think that they're God because of the little knowledge. To be able to manage things in the material world, it's like people are managing this city. It's a huge city. Requires a great deal of intelligence to do it, acquired from previous deeds that they've done in the past. But they've come to this position where they had such good intelligence, but they misused it for something, so they're called Maya Pritijnanas. They've learned many things, but their knowledge, the real knowledge about their eternality and the purpose of how to organize society has been stolen by illusion. So at every step in this material world, varna and ashrama will be there, but it'll just manifest it either purely or impurely, that's all.
I was asking also because there's many people who are pursuing Krishna consciousness, but they're not properly situated, or they're not just in the either brahmachari or grihastha or sannyasi, but they're still making the endeavor to pursue and grow in Krishna consciousness. So what's the solution for them?
No, we're not interested. I mean, I'm not interested in varnashram. Probably never indicated so much. He wanted to develop it. He mentioned it, but for ourselves, it's not very relevant at this particular point. It would be relevant if we actually progress the preaching movement to the extent that we have to engage. We have so many ordinary people who are not interested so much in directly engaging in Krishna consciousness, but they want some positive they want some instruction from us how to live their life in a more positive way. So, but right now we don't have people flocking to us, asking us how we can live our lives, their lives in a practical way, because we don't live our lives in a practical way. People aren't looking to us. The Hare Krishna movement is the example of, expertise, management, and whereas the FBI, when we had some difficulty in San Francisco, in California, in San Francisco, some good time ago, and they were thinking that the Hare Krishna movement, when we were a little bit more prominent, they were making plans to overthrow the government or something. So the FBI was investigated. That's when we were much more prominent. And then the conclusion of the FBI was, hey, these people are not going to take over anything. He said they're so untogether they can't even answer the phone. So I don't think we're the shining example that people are flocking to solve their material problems right now. We're just lucky if we can chant our rounds every day. Anything else? All right, thank you very much. Grantaraj Bhagavad-gita Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.
Hare Hare Bol.